New offensive coordinator Kurt Roper met with the media for the first time on Wednesday, and he stressed tempo. Is the NC State offense going to pump up the numbers in 2025?
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Happy Wednesday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. As previously stated, offensive coordinator Kurt Roper met with the media on Wednesday, and his main pillar that he wanted to talk about is offensive tempo. Putting the best players on the field at the right time, getting them into positions to be explosive, and playing fast. In fact, why don't we just hear from the man himself? I have a clip for us.
Well, I think you have to have the ability to control tempo. And I will say this, I think it's easier to teach them to go fast and then slow them down rather than go slow, then speed them up. And then I think you have several ways to control that tempo, whether it's get back into an 11-man huddle, a sugar huddle, a tempo play, a one-word play. But if you want to control tempo, the first thing you have to do is be able to go fast.
So, Kenton, when you hear Roper speak about tempo on day one of his press availability here, does it inspire any confidence that maybe things will be different in 2025, or is this just more coach speak for the time being?
I mean, at the end of the day, every coach is going to say the same standard 9 or 10 sentences in their, opening press conferences and all that. I mean, if you look at Allen over at Clemson, it was a very similar situation. We're going to be aggressive. We're going to attack on defense. We're going to be downhill. Of course, that's what every coach says. That's what defensive coordinators always say. The same way Roper and offensive coordinators talk about tempo. Get the best guys the ball in there. Get the best guys the ball in space. But one thing in particular that I want to talk about is something that he didn't really touch on in that clip, getting the right players on the field.
Yes.
I believe that in that he sensed that there needed to be something said about the fact that NC State has the guys. I don't think that anybody would argue, does NC State have the talent on the perimeter to do good things? I don't think anybody would argue that. I think what is a much more salient argument is that, with all due respect, why were certain players playing so much last year? That would have been a much better question than, do they have players? Because there were certain guys that we saw when they were targeted, statistically speaking, some of the top guys in the nation in terms of yards per target and whatnot, in a Justin Jolie. Some of the guys who yards per carry through the roof, like a Hollywood Smothers, and so on and so forth. And so you look at that and you say, it's about getting it to the right players at the right time, getting those right players in the game. And it seems like Roper is very intentional about mentioning that. But as far as what was actually in that clip and everything about, hey, we're going to go up tempo, we're going to go fast, that's typical offense speak. Some coaches say, oh, we're going to be a mixed bag. Some teams say, it's not about doing it fast, it's about doing it right. But it's just kind of setting the expectation. This is going to be a very up-tempo, go. We're rolling type of offense.
Yeah, I mean, for reference in terms of coach speak, Robert and I said a lot of the same things when he entered his time here at NC State as well. He talked about being explosive, the whole 9 yards. So it is a little bit of like, what did you really expect the guy to say? But I do want to talk about, Kenton, your point about his intentionality. I think when you're looking at the NC State skill players and the fact that they were able to retain the entire receiving core outside of Casey Concepcion, you do bring back CJ Bailey, you do bring back Hollywood Smothers, Kendrick Raphael, Duke Scott, bringing back all of those guys, despite some of the turnover on the staff and some of the players going into the portal, that tells me that they believe really strongly in the guys that they have. They know that they can be a good explosive offense with the pieces they have. They clearly believe in that, or else they wouldn't have had a concerted effort to bring all those same guys back. So I think there's something to be said for that. And Roper being so intentional about tempo, it's interesting here because NC State's offense, they had times where they'd show tempo, and seemingly it was always in the fourth quarter when their back was up against the wall, they're down by multiple scores, and it worked out really well for them. But in the grand scheme of things, This was an offense that struggled a lot in getting out of their own way. They only ended up averaging, I think it was 28.5 points over the course of the entire season. Their third down efficiency numbers were only 37.4%. That's bad. That's flat out bad. It's bad and it's not good. Fourth down, they were 55%, which is not horrible, but it's not that great either. If you're going to take that risks that many times, you're going to want to have a higher conversion rate as that one. But obviously there was a lot of kinks to work out. You have a freshman quarterback going through the motions of him growing up. Next year, we're trying to hit the ground running here. There is no, going through the motions with a freshman quarterback. He's got a whole year under his belt now. And that goes for not just CJ, but Hollywood Smothers, Noah Rogers, Wesley Grimes, Justin Jolie. It's all of these same guys. And so I think if you're putting Kurt Roper in the driver's seat now, we want to see this thing go 0 to 60. We don't want to hit 30 and then see how much further we can take before we got to hit the brakes a little bit. No, we want to come flying out the gate. And if he's going to talk about tempo, we want to see it from day one.
Absolutely. And the reality is what tempo does is it doesn't allow defenses to get into different looks, number one. Number two, it sets defenses up in terms of you have to get it right away. And don't get me wrong, a defense that can get aligned and assigned to an up-tempo offense, congratulations, you already won half the battle there. But most defenses can't, despite the fact that there are a lot of up-tempo offenses. It still is a bit of an anomaly. And, it's kind of the ways to prepare for that are so limited and it's so tough, which we saw against Tennessee last year. The differences in talent withstanding, it was still a situation where guys kind of wore down by the end of the game from that pace, from that, hey, we're constantly, every time we get a stop, we're right back on the ball. That is a situation that you are going to put your offense in a net positive again, just by saying we're going to get the ball in the right guy's hands right away and let them do something with it. And then we're right back on the ball. And then we're right back to, hey, we need to run another play. Because at the end of the day, most of the top offenses in the nation, most of the most prolific have the, shortest time in terms of, amount of time between snaps. So if this team is what you and I have often said and alluded to in terms of next year, a team that is going to be led by the offense and the offense is going to have to carry to put up some special performances, that this aggressive attacking, hey, we got to go fast, get on the ball style is something that you're going to need.
And probably the most important thing that I want to see from Kurt Roper, we talked about it the entire season, and you already mentioned it on here, Kenton, the right players being targeted or utilized in the games at the right time. That was probably the number one complaint across the board of everybody that watched NC State this year. For example, like Justin Jolie being targeted 3 times a game, or Hollywood Smothers gone missing for an entire quarter when he dominated the whole first half. We're beating a dead horse here, but that's what we want to see. We want to see the technical things behind the scenes cleaned up, because it seems like it wouldn't be that hard of a fix. Your best players on the field at the right time, and then use them. You went out in the portal and collected all of them last year, and then this year you used probably the majority of your NIL money in retaining all of those guys. So if they're going to be here, use them. Use a guy like a Noah Rogers. Use a guy like Wesley Grimes, Hollywood Smothers, Justin Jolie. These are some of the guys that should be like top performers in the ACC. I don't think that's a step too far at all. We know what Hollywood Smothers can do. We saw it. We know what Justin Jolie can do. He should be in the running for the Mackey Award. I think that's a very legitimate claim. And Kenton talked about that weeks ago. We want to see Kurt Roper being very intentional with the usage of the players, because it really shouldn't have to be that hard. There were so many times with the Robert and I offense where it was just like, it's completely incompetent. And we all know how that went. So again, don't want to beat a dead horse here, but at least Kurt Roper seems to be in the right place as he's taking this thing over. He said all the things that you want him to say, but now we want to actually see that put wheels in motion and get this thing rolling. Coming up next, we're going to get into a new transfer portal window being discussed across college football. I personally think it makes sense. We'll see what Kenton thinks after a quick word from our sponsors. Our first Wednesday sponsor is WayFair. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my home helps me get back into a routine in the new year. Whether you're tidying up, cleaning out, or just want to give your new space a new look to start the year, WayFair has everything you need all within your budget. Me personally, I'm currently looking for furniture, and their huge selection on WayFair makes it easy to find pieces that fit my style and budget. My favorite part, the free and hassle-free delivery, even for all of the larger items. WayFair's site is so easy to navigate that I'm able to find everything I need in no time flat. Give your home the refresh it needs with WayFair. Head on over to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR, wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Middle portion of our Wednesday show, now transitioning into some transfer portal talk, more of the administrative side. I did see an article posted on Tuesday on ESPN written by David Hale, and it's about the college football coaches discussing a new transfer portal window. And a lot of this came up because some of the premier players that wanted to enter their name in the portal, but their team was supposed to be in the college football playoff, they find themselves between a rock and a hard place. If they want to use their name to get into the portal, well, they got to leave their team in the middle of perhaps one of the bigger seasons in school history, like a Penn State or an SMU, for example. That came up almost instantly, and you certainly come to expect that because of where the window was. It was December 9th to December 28th. And yeah, that's going to pose a lot of problems. Bo Pribula from Penn State comes to my mind immediately. That's a kid that grew up a Penn State fan and had to leave Penn State before they entered the college football playoff. That's a horrible situation, and it seems like it can be very easily rectified. Well, it seems that the football coaches across the country are working very quickly to do so. There's a meeting at the 2025 American Football Coaches Association convention, and they proposed that there's now a single portal window from January 2nd to January 12th, only 10 days, and that would potentially start for the next calendar academic year. Kenton, what do you make of this? Do you think this is the right move for college football?
I think it's the right move for college football, but I'm still a little confused as to how that solves the problem of players having to leave before national championship run. Like, if we're looking at the national championship now, today is the 15th. The national championship isn't for another 5 days.
Right.
So I'm a little confused here, Grayson. If you could elaborate a little bit on how this solves that problem, because maybe it's something I'm missing. I played football for 17 years. My brain get a little soft sometimes. Help me out.
Well, I would assume the 5-day rule would still be in effect, even for players that are potentially in that national championship. So it wouldn't be per se they're missing a window. However, they would be, again, I guess, perhaps behind the 8 ball, because that was the original point of all this conversation. Players want to be able to get into the portal as soon as they can to find their best play. That's why you saw Casey do it in like less than 24 hours after our regular season had ended. Several other players fall under the same bill. So I think there might still be some tinkering to have to go on with the dates there. But what do you make of the shorter window aspect of it? Because the one previous of this year was, I think, like 20 to 21 days. This one is only 10. Do you think that's too short, or do you think they can get it done in that amount of time?
I think that's plenty of time. I mean, you know, if you want to go, you know, whatever decisions you need to make, whatever factors into that situation where you're making that decision to leave or stay, you should be able to reach out to whoever your wise counsel is, to whoever your Knights of the Round Table are, and say, like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. How are we thinking? What are we thinking as a unit? What are we going to do about this? That should be done, you know, well within that time frame. So, I mean, I don't really see too much of a problem with a shorter time frame there.
Well, here's one more caveat for you. They're also proposing that there's no spring window. So it would only be that 10-day window in early January. There would no longer be another one in April, right around spring football, just only in January. Does that change your opinion?
I kind of don't like doing away with the spring portal, only because that seems like, I thought that the portal in and of itself would be a self-correcting problem. I really did. I thought that players were going to look up and realize, like, wait a minute, I don't have any film. Me leaving is kind of dumb. Like, I'm not going to, you know, and that didn't happen. But one thing that has happened, in terms of spring portal guys, there's not a ton. Like, when's the last time we saw a really, really big name jump in the portal in spring?
I can't even think of one off the top of my head, which proves your point.
And that's what I'm saying. So I think that we're making a non-issue an issue here, but I mean, I don't know. I don't really think too much one way or the other in terms of the spring portal potentially being permanently closed. I don't think that it helps or harms anybody in a significant enough way for me to, you know, have a like, oh, weighty, this matters or this doesn't matter type of opinion.
Yeah, me personally, I do think a shorter window in January makes sense instead of December. But at the same time, I think you still got to keep that spring window, because once players do get into spring football, and a lot of times I think that starts in like February, goes all the way through the first couple weeks of April, a lot of times guys don't really know where they stand within the program or perhaps a depth chart until they're physically out there with the team. And so if you eliminate that window, they're really just kind of taking a guess in January. Right. And that could lead to even more players not being able to find a home or perhaps picking the wrong spot for them. I think if the overall goal is allowing players to pick the best situation for themselves, they're going to need more than just 10 days. I think 20 days is the right number. And I guess it would be considered a winter window and then a spring window. I think that makes the most sense to me. But a lot of interesting conversation around this. And perhaps moving this window would also cure December opt-outs. We've already kind of touched on the opt-out portion of this, but perhaps you'd see more players opt into playing the bowl game instead of having to decide earlier if they're going to hit the portal or not. Do you think that would alter, I guess, the importance of bowl games or not? Or do you think it would stay relatively the same?
No, I think the bowl game thing is relatively the same. And I think that if anything, and I'm not sure if the ratings have dropped enough for bowls to be incentivized to do this, but bowl collectives need to create NIL deals with the players. Like, hey, whoever, everybody who plays in this game signs a waiver saying if you're the MVP, if you're the, ReliaQuest Bowl MVP or whatever, you sign the jersey, we'll give you X amount of dollars or whatever the case may be. Just as like a kind of thing where it's like, hey, listen, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're on the roster, you play this game, you do well in this game, you'll be incentivized to do so. This is not a situation where it's like, oh, well, you just kind of show up, do your best, and we keep it pushing from there. No, very much so. If you earn your keep, if you play phenomenally, have a defensive player, offensive player, special team player, all three of them get different amounts or whatever, overall player of the game, however you want to cut or slice it, have that kind of situation set up and pay the players. But I don't think that a changing of a portal window impacts whether or not guys opt in or opt out in a meaningful way.
Yeah, so of course the coaches did approve of this. It's still going to have to go through the NCAA Oversight Committee. Who really knows what comes out of that? The NCAA, no clue at all. But this is something to keep an eye on coming down the pipeline. I think it could maybe fix some of the issues with the portal, perhaps could make them worse. But nonetheless, a lot to keep in the back of your mind here as they continue to work through the best new landscape for the sport of college football. Coming up next, we're going to switch gears, get into some basketball talk before NC State faces off with the Hokies on Wednesday night. This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. Second Wednesday sponsor is Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions that you forgot about or that maybe you were paying for twice? It's definitely happened to me, shamefully, and I've had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for. Rocket Money makes it easier to track all of these down, and it's just like having a personal assistant for all of your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel all of your unwanted subscriptions. It monitors your spending and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings together everything in one place, whether it's your subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals that you're looking to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved over a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to an average of about $740 per year when using all the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel several services that I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set money aside for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Head on over to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Last couple of minutes of our Wednesday show. Now transitioning into some packed basketball talk. NC State men's basketball is on the road Wednesday evening in Blacksburg, Virginia, facing the Hokies for the first time this season. The Hokies have struggled. NC State have struggled. It's the 6-year anniversary of the infamous 24-point game. It sucks playing these guys. Every single time we play the Hokies, we are forever entwined with the worst basketball performance of all time. And with the way that our team is playing right now, there's not even really anything that we can talk about that doesn't make you think about that 24-point performance. That team struggled to score. This team struggled to score. Bad Virginia Tech team now. This game is going to be probably an ugly watch. It's probably going to be low scoring. NC State's currently favored by 1.5. To me, it feels like more of a toss-up. To be honest with Kenton and everyone else here, kind of tired of Pac basketball, so we're not really going to get into like keys or anything. But listen, this is a game that you cannot lose. And I mean, you can say that about literally every single game left on the schedule, but it's a road game in the ACC. Wins like that are hard to come by. Virginia Tech is just not a good team this year. And if you're NC State, if you have any type of a pulse, you got to go win this one.
I mean, any type of pulse is an understatement. I don't know what it is about Virginia Tech and their defense is locking in the state of North Carolina, because I believe they played against, what was it, Wake Forest under Beamer when they went to overtime at 0-0 or something crazy. Yeah, something crazy like that. Like that's, it's I hate being reminded of that game. I hate thinking about that game. I really and truly do, because to say we couldn't throw a rock in the ocean from a beach, to say we couldn't hit a super Walmart from the parking lot, to say that our players couldn't score in a brothel with $1 million per guy. I mean, it's just one of those moments that you look up and you're just like, damn, can anybody put the ball in the basket? Please, I'm begging you. It's one of those moments that makes you question your faith, because you're like, if there is a God, he would not make me endure this. He would not. And then you realize you chose to endure this. But either way it goes, it's just a moment. It's just a moment where you got to not think about that in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Just go out there and win a basketball game. Just go out there and win a basketball game. Enter Sandman ain't coming, okay? That's not going to happen. We're not going to see some of those guys who recently played extremely good basketball for Virginia Tech walk through that door. So, like Grayson said, you kind of have to win this one. This is one of those games where it's like, yes, you're not great, but you don't want to be amongst the bottom feeders. Like that feels like a very low bar, but that's kind of where the bar is right now.
Yeah, Virginia Tech is a team that is very likely going to finish probably somewhere in the bottom of the conference. And at this rate, maybe NC State will as well, but I tend to believe they'll do a little bit better than the bottom of the conference. But if you don't want to sit the bottom of the conference, again, these are the types of games that you have to find a way to win. We harped a lot on Tuesday's episode about rebounding because it has been so poor. I understand Brandon Huntley-Hatfield will also be out for Wednesday evening's game. Ben Middlebrooks, grab a bat, buddy. You're up again. We need a big game in the front court. Probably him, Diouf, and Styles. They're going to have to control the paint, control the glass, and control the game. If you cannot out-rebound Virginia Tech, which is not a good rebounding team, I think they're just slightly ahead of where we're at, which is, again, at the very bottom of the conference.
Right.
I don't know what else to say at this point. This team has to find a way to win this game. The ball movement needs to be better. The creation of offense needs to be better. Cut down the turnovers. Box out, for the love of God. Play good defense. I'm beating a dead horse with all basic phrases, but these are the basic phrases that this team needs to demonstrate right now. This team is not good enough to get into the more complex levels of basketball. They can't do the simple things right, the fundamentals right. And if you can't get those right, I don't know what else to talk about.
Yeah, there are three teams. So, you talk about them being a bad rebounding team as well. So here's the deal, right? Virginia is the worst rebounding team in the league with 30.8 rebounds per game. Yeah. And then you've got three from 15 through 17, Virginia Tech, Miami, then us, who are putting up 33.5, 33.2, and 33.1 rebounds per game, respectively. So we're 0.4 rebounds a game behind them. This is two teams that do not rebound the ball well. You have to figure out a way to get this done. You have to figure out a way to just do enough. It doesn't have to be pretty. You don't have to dominate. Just leave Blacksburg with a win.
In the absence of keys, we'll both give you a leading scorer for this game. Kenton, I'll let you go first. Who leads the pack in scoring on Wednesday night?
I don't think this is going to be controversial to anybody at all. I think Marcus Hill is probably going to be your guy again. I think that he's been asked to carry the bulk of the scoring load all year. I don't really see that changing in this one.
I'll go with Jaden Taylor. I think his three-point shooting has been a valuable asset to this team because really only Jaden and Breon can hit it consistently. Give me Jaden Taylor in this game so long as he doesn't get out of control and kind of take over the show. I think if he's put into a better spot to be a 3-and-D guy in a game like this, he could really take it over in a positive light. So we'll see how that goes on Wednesday evening. That'll do it for us here on Wednesday. As always, thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button, drop your comments in the comment box. Mash that subscribe button if you have not already. We'll see you right back here on Thursday for more. And until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.